Good morning, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at another submission by a good friend in Sweden, Tytti and her horse. And we can see clearly today, if you go back and look at his previous videos, just starting off here in the walk, how much better the horse is simply walking. In the earlier videos of this horse, we saw he literally looked like his hind legs were being pulled out of mud as he walked along. We can see now he clearly is picking up his hind legs much more actively, getting right into a very nice stretch here, even right from the very beginning. Now, she does say she lunged him before she got on him here at this time. But once again, what a much, much better walk we have. And as we get closer to the horse here and we can get a better picture, we can see how soft he's become on the underside of his neck. That tells us he's begun to stop pulling so much with his shoulders. Whenever you see a horse that's very, very developed on the underside of the neck, or ewe-necked as we call it, that horse is generally pulling with its shoulders. That's what causes those muscles to build up. They've even proven now the horses that have been roll-curred, this is what happens to them because it disconnects their back so much and they move through the shoulder instead of through the back the way they should. Getting into the trot here, we see once again, and I suggest that everyone go back and compare these videos with the earlier videos of this horse. He's swinging his hind legs so much better, so much more actively. He does not look so stiff. He looked like he was very stiff, just bracing up into the bridle into the other in the other videos that we saw of him. And now he looks like he's really moving over the ground really, really nicely, comparatively, of course. Now he will improve even beyond this a great deal, I'm sure, if she keeps up the work. But this is really a huge improvement in the horse. I mean, look how freely he's moving forward. As I said, once again, go back and look at the earlier videos in horse, and you'll see he kind of looked like he was stuck in the mud, so to speak. But now he's swinging and active. Not always perfectly in the stretch, but there he goes. That's much better right there. That's where we'd like to see him stay, right there. That's beautiful. In the previous videos that we saw of this horse, she could get him kind of into a stretch from time to time, but his neck wasn't lengthening out from the shoulder. Even now, his neck looks so much longer. His neck is beginning to look longer out of the shoulders. The horse is not, as I call it, turtling their necks back into the body, which is what happens when anytime people ride with backwards pressure on the reins. I will never be able to understand how people think that pulling the horse's neck back at them is going to somehow create collection or is going to somehow create a horse that wants to move. It's certainly never going to do that. And you can see here now that he has a little stumble there from time to time. That's not anything to think about. Just hit a bad spot in the ring, I'm sure. But once again, he's just swinging actively and looks like he's going somewhere. My father used to always look at horses that were upside down and say they'd never make it to the next town. Of course, he was born in 1904, so from a time when people actually did ride horses from town to town and understood that. But once again, look how much deeper he's stepping under his body, how much more active, how his hock is now making a round circle. Right there is absolutely beautiful for him. Now we can still see a little dip there behind the saddle when we see him close enough. That will all develop beautifully in time. That dip behind the saddle will all fill in, and the horse will become much more developed over his top line. I love how she's not sitting to the trot on him. She's just staying to a rising trot most of the time and keeping him swinging and active. And she's doing exercises that are appropriate for the horse at this level. Big circles, maybe some leg yields, things like that. That's all we need because we're interested in the movement. So very often people get hung up in wanting to do upper level movements very quickly on their horses. We can also see here, and I want you to compare this so you can see how his belly has pulled up right away. In previous tapes that we've seen of the horse, you know, he looked quite pendulous or bulbous around his flanks there, which is telling me he was not using his back. But look how here he's pulling up. You can see his belly clearly pulling up. And that was a nice downwards transition she made there. Notice she didn't pull back on the rein. She just let him step back into a walk. And that's really, really good. This horse's top line has improved so much. So you're going to see a little lunging with the horse now. And once again, this all looks so much more consistent than we saw before. Look how nicely he's stretching deep into that contact. And how happily the horse does the work. You know, once you realize that, you know, if you have a horse that's unhappy, there's a reason for it. And, you know, almost every horse I've ever met in my life that was difficult to ride was difficult because of the way he had been ridden. People asking the horse to do work in frames that make it almost impossible for him. Once again, anytime you are pulling the neck back at you into the horse, how do you expect him to move forward when you're pulling him back all the time? Doesn't work at all. But this is really, really nice and shows such a clear improvement of this horse. Look how much bigger his step. He's starting to overtrack quite nicely there. This is very, very, very good. And shows once again how all of you can at home, you know, you'll get a lot further training like this on your own than you'll get in any other way. You know, so many people come to me after they've gone to trainers who basically told them that, you know, your horse is no good, you need to get another one. Well, every horse is good. You know, I've never seen, you know, if the horse is sound, it can be worked and it can be improved. Now, whether it's going to be an Olympic dressage winner is, you know, neither here nor there. Most of you are never going to go to the Olympics anyway. You know, the Olympics today for the horse industry has simply become, you know, whoever can afford it. You know, since we had somebody here in the United States who sued the AHSA because they felt that they had been cheated out of their spot in the Olympic team. And the result of that was that now what we have, instead of having a team that's run by a coach who can pick the best horses and the best riders, now it's simply who can go to the most horse shows, which of course, you know, really helps those corporate entities now run these horse shows. You know, when I was a kid, we used to go to a horse show. You know, you went to a few horse shows a year, and you could go to the Olympic Games with only going to a few horse shows a year, as many people did in those days. You know, if they saw that you had the talent, the coaches would bring you on and help you develop your horse. And then sometimes they would put someone else on your horse if they felt that that's the way it went. But that would never happen today with the system that we have, which is simply whoever can go to the most horse shows and rack up the most points and spend the most money, you know, can go to the Olympic Games. And that's really made a mockery of our sport. So think about these things when you think about, you know, the horse sports in the Olympics. You know, we would very much like to see, in dressage, for instance, I would very much like to see, especially because it's still, you know, if you're going to go 3-day eventing or jumping, if you can't jump a 6-foot fence, well, you better not be in there. You at least better have some talent, even if you can afford the $1 million packers. But today in dressage, it's simply, you know, whoever can buy the $1 million horse and spend the time and pay the money for all the magazine ads and the covers of the magazine. A lot of people don't even realize today how all this works. You know, the way all the horse magazines work mostly today, unlike how it used to work when they saw talented people, they would do articles on them. Now the way most of the horse magazines work is you pay for advertising for your farm or your breeding or whatever the case it is, or for yourself as a trainer, and they put you on the cover, and depending on how much money you spend, you know, they'll make a star out of you. Well, that's a very sad thing that's happened. It's kind of like, that's how dog showing used to be. I used to know people who showed dogs, and that's how it was. Whoever spent the most money on publicity, you know, was the one who had, you know, got their name in front of the judges all the time, and judging having become a very political thing now, everybody knows who has the money, and they chase after it. And that's been very sad for the horse, because we have seen the standard of riding and training go down and down and down. But anyway, think about all these things when you think about these. I personally would like to see a change in the standards for dressage, especially. I don't think anybody should be able to buy a horse 6 months earlier and go to the Olympic Games on it, you know, 6 months later. You know, this makes a mockery of the sport. You know, dressage, the word dressage means training. Our friend here in Sweden is doing a much better job training than many of the people I see who go to the Olympic Games, you know, because they bought their way there. So we'd like to see it become an amateur sport again, and I would like to see a rule change where people had to at least have owned a horse for a couple of years. And what we see with most cases of these $1 million horses, before a couple of years is up, they've ruined them, and the horse is finished anyway, just like we've seen some of these famous cases in recent history. And I'm hoping that people will begin to open their eyes to these things and get back to real training and riding and developing. The word dressage means training. So if you're not training the horse, you're not a dressage rider. If you've just bought some horse that you're getting on and some trainer's propping it up for you and you're getting up there and riding it, you're not a trainer. You're not doing dressage. You're just a passenger on the back of a horse that somebody else has trained. So once again, I would much rather see people starting with their own horses like our friend here is doing, and bringing them along and really enjoying them. You know, only a few horses are ever going to go into those upper levels anyway. But everyone can enjoy the horses that they have. If they're sound, they can be turned into lovely, lovely animals to ride, and they can find a place in your life and become a wonderful companion for you. Once again, this looks really nice. I want everyone to go back and compare this video with what we saw in some of the earlier ones. You'll see how much freer this horse is and is going. Look how nicely his bottom of the neck is really soft now. You can see the top line of the horse clearly igniting here as we see this horse moving, and this is just absolutely a wonderful improvement. And she's not even riding this horse this much. This horse only gets ridden and worked because of their schedule a few days a week and on the weekends, and she's just done a wonderful job of bringing him along. This looks so free and active. She looks like she's having a good time. There's no fight involved here. You know, if you're fighting with your horse, there's something wrong. You're either the saddle doesn't fit, or you don't know how to ride well enough to make him comfortable in the work that you're trying to ask him to do. It's so sad today. We see so many beautiful horses being wasted, and, you know, having only a couple of year useful life, because of people are just taking the horse shows weekend after weekend and burning them out, never really becoming partners with them. You know, in many cases, the horse are drugged every day. We have cases here in America all the time where people don't even realize that the trainers are drugging their horses every day before they come for lessons. And then they take them to the horse show, they can't get away from with the drugging, so they have to lunge them for hours and hours and hours to get them calm enough for the people to ride. We must all fight back against all of this kind of activity with horses and work towards a more systematic approach where riders are really learning to ride and enjoy their horses again, because that's really what the sport is truly about. Once again, looking how nicely this horse is developing through his neck, and we can see these pictures that we're coming up to here. Look how nicely and clearly he's swinging the front leg and back leg on the same plane. That is, the back leg and front leg are swinging at the exact same moment. He's a little slow right here and could move on, and she'll make him a little more active in a moment, I'm sure. But compared to what we saw before, this horse is absolutely developing beautifully. There, you got a good shot of his neck there, and you can see the top line muscles igniting beautifully. This is very, very good work. And I'm hoping, the reason I've given my scholarships around the world to people, because I would love to see people around the world, like our good friend here, being an inspiration to others, you know, to watch and seeing how it can be done without fight and without abuse of the animals. There's just there's nothing that should happen like that ever. And as she says here, but the difference to me is very clear, and it's very true. You know, this is somebody who's understood it. She's seen her horse, who's not the most fabulous mover in the world, but look how beautifully he's working over his back, how he's developing, and she's able to enjoy the horse and make him into a good, safe ride and become a companion for her as well. You know, when training is done well, horses are very, very willing creatures. And if we treat them correctly, they'll be willing partners for years to come. So this is absolutely beautiful and shows wonderful improvement here, and we'll see you next time.